people use the term, they bandy it about, in a sense, as if some people have an ideology and others don't. Ideology refers to an intellectual framework which directs our political beliefs in particular. And to the extent that it means that you and I have an ideology, and the guy behind the camera has an ideology, and I don't really know anybody who doesn't. So if the question is, can ideology lead to hate crimes? Well, the answer is resoundingly yes. The real more difficult question might be, can we understand hate crimes without thinking about ideology? And I'm not sure we can answer that question. Maybe we can't. Hate crimes are certainly a form of violent extremism. That's clear. Is it generated or is it pushed by a particular ideological framework? Probably not. Could you have hate crimes that are the result of different ideologies? You'd have to assume so. But really, in terms of research methodology, how we might want to go about trying to study hate crimes, you need to identify the crime. You need to identify a situation, a circumstance, an event, something that happens, and then you need to ask about why it happens and how it happens. And you'd be remiss not to look into the ideology of those who perpetrate hate crimes. Of course it's important, but it's not necessarily gonna answer the question for you. It's only part of it, I think. And you have to look at practice. You have to look at what people are doing in the community they live in. People who are committing hate crimes today, what kind of social circumstances are they living in? Is it because they're poor? I don't think so. Is it because they're poorly educated or have a low level of education? I don't think so. I don't think that's what defines it. I think that much more dynamic, local, cultural factors are in play. You have to look at the group. You have to look at the clan or the society that's generating people who commit hate crimes. Now, I do think that many hate crimes today, they're born of racism. I don't think that's the only possibility, but just once again, in terms of method, in terms of how do I go about trying to study this, I'm going to be asking always if racism is in play. It's a good bet it will be. What do we mean by right? This is a term that right and left, these are terms we use all the time. We use them in very specific academic language, and we use them in everyday language without ever really thinking about them. I mean, these are terms that are born of the French Revolution. These are, they're late 18th century terms that have become omnipresent in our political language, and yet most of the time we don't question our own suppositions about what they mean. And because we don't, we oftentimes gloss over things that are complicated, not simple. But if we want to think about right-wing extremism starting from the problem of white supremacy in European cultures, European nations, including the United States, including Australia, former colonial nations, then we need to understand that race is again involved. And right-wing extremism is tied to white supremacy, and it's tied to xenophobia, and it's tied to a rejection of immigration. And this is profoundly ironic because this immigration exists to a large degree, whether it's Africans going north into Europe, whether it's Latin Americans going north into the United States. This immigration exists from former colonies toward the nations of the former colonial masters. Once upon a time, white people from these northern European nations went south and colonized a good part of the world. It's only very much more recently where people who are the descendants of the colonized are now migrating or emigrating from the south to the north. And in places like Germany or the Nordic countries, which have been relatively homogeneous culturally, ethnically, racially, very white countries, the explosive growth of non-white people has generated violence. And it's not exclusively that way, but that's, I think, a pretty convincing generalization. The United States is a little different because it's had much more immigration for a much longer time, but there's a similar pattern at work. And the right-wing violence in the United States is overwhelmingly being committed by white people, and oftentimes committed against people of color.